A Gaelic Gathering, Irish Music and Dance, is an ensemble of dancers and musicians. Our show includes reels, jigs and hornpipes played on fiddle, flute, whistle, guitar, accordion, Irish uilleann pipes and bodhrán, the Irish drum, plus lilting, mouth music. The tunes are accompanied by lively rhythmic hard and soft tune dancing and formation céilí dancing. A Gaelic Gathering embodies the celebration of tradition, from haunting songs and steps to a feast of the very best Irish music and dance.
I was once in love and it didn't prove fact, and ever since I wear the black.
A Gaelic Gathering is directed by Máire Clerkin. Visit our webpage at maireclerkin.com.
Hello and welcome to Be My Guest with me, Mary Honan, on Lir Media TV, supporting the Samaritans, Limerick and Tipperary. And here she is, Máire Clerkin, all the way from the USA. Hi, Máire.
Hello there, Mary. How lovely to see you and how great to be here.
It's fabulous for me. I feel like a dwarf here. Only my neck up is seen, whereas you're obviously much taller than me. I have it fixed now.
Now I'm feeling I better adjust my posture.
No, but
which was never my strong suit.
Oh, but your feet are lovely. I was looking at you doing Bonaparte's retreat on there today, and I was thinking.
Oh, Madame Bonaparte?
Madame Bonaparte, I mean. And feet were beautiful, lovely, very impressed. Even with the slippers on, doing the traditional hornpipe. The feet were great.
I had good teachers.
What?
I had good teachers.
Yeah, you had. Máire, we know each other for a long time. I've interviewed you before on another station, but it was audio only. So people didn't get to see your beautiful face and your lovely hair. I love it.
Well, the front bit is my real colour, and the back bit is my former real colour. So work that out if you can, hairstylists.
Oh no, you should keep it like
so
that.
It's
very distinguished looking.
So as you know.
I think it's very
distinguished. I like that. Very
distinguished looking. Máire, tell me, how did you get involved in Irish dancing? I know you come from you're the daughter of a dancing teacher, but
yes, exactly. I'm afraid the decision was made for me. There was no free will. I didn't decide to dance, but I then didn't decide not to dance. I mean, I was dancing since before I can remember it, and it was. My mother was an Irish dance teacher, and there were 5 of us, and so we all went along and did it. And The 3 girls liked it, loved it, could do it. The 2 boys were there under sufferance to make up the numbers in the teams. Let's put it the polite way.
It's amazing how many boys find it hard to go, and then once they're there, many of them just take to it like a duck to water. I mean,
well, I think
Father Michael told me that he went because the boys were free on a certain day, and his mother didn't have the money, and he went and he loved it. And it was even when the teacher wanted him to, I think Ted Kavanagh wanted him to go to the All Ireland one year, he had to say, look, I'll have to ask my mum because I don't know if we have the money. You know, and I just think that's sad even today that there's such good children could potentially lose out because they can't afford.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest bugbears with Irish dancing, is the fact that it has become a rich man's game, and it sort of it leaves out a lot of people, and I think that's a shame. But getting back to the boys, you see, back in the 60s and 70s and early 80s, that, you know, probably into the 90s, boys were wearing kilts, and my brothers were not going to be wearing a skirt. You know, they were North London boys, and you know, you weren't going to be called a sissy, and you know, there was that, you know, macho behaviour. So I think a lot of boys wouldn't go near it.
And I think it's very masculine. If you look at Danny Doherty's teams, even today, and you look at the boys in the kilt, in their teams.
I agree. And you know, my dad danced. I mean, that's how he met my mother at an Irish dancing class. He had just moved over from Ireland, and he met her at Mr. Smith's dancing class. So, you know, thank goodness. Thank goodness
my grandmother was a dancer. She was an Irish dancer. She played the button accordion, and she played the concertina, and she sang traditional. So she was really an all-round traditional, but she loved dancing. Do you know?
Lovely. My grandmother played the concertina. My grandmother from South Armagh played the concertina, and she danced a little. But she said that everybody just danced in the village, Newton Hamilton, where she's from. She said everybody just danced. You know, it wasn't I don't know if there were classes. She wasn't at a class, but it was just everybody did it. Everybody danced the Cayleys. And she said that she remembers Tomás Farrelly as a young man coming around South Armagh to make notes on the dances.
Well, Dr. John Culnan showed me some beautiful photos. They're going to be in his backdrop of Tomás Farrelly dancing many years ago on radio, ever before Rory O'Connor. He danced on radio with the microphone on the ground to pick up his footwork. You
Wonderful.
Know, amazing, because I loved that man, Tomás Farrelly. I just thought he was everything an examiner should be, and he was the best of the best. You know, he was such a gentleman. He wanted to see the best in everybody, and he wanted to bring out the best in you. I just thought he was amazing. I had him for my TCRG.
Right. Well, interestingly, he was also a yoga practitioner.
Oh,
he did yoga daily. He lived till he was nearly 100 years of age.
He did.
And yoga has been, I hate to sound so Southern Californian, but yoga has been my lifesaver. I would not have still been able to dance had I not done yoga, because, you know, it just strengthens your body in ways that other things didn't really work for me. So, you know, that's...
I think I might take up yoga.
Sorry?
I think I might take up yoga.
Well, it was only because my friend was the yoga teacher. I mean, I used to go and, you know, us Irish dancers, we do things fast. So I was very bored for the first few months.
Oh, I went to yoga once and I fell asleep. I enjoyed the part where they tell you to lie down and cover yourself up with a blanket at the end.
Oh, I love that bit too. That's my favourite bit. But
I woke up with a man snoring beside me.
Yeah, it was those very hard exercises where all the weight seems to be going into your hands and you know, weak upper body, and but it was very good for me. And, you know, if my friend hadn't been giving me these free classes down at LA City College, I don't know whether I would have bothered. But I did find that after a few months, that I began to feel quite different, and that it really is a great body strengthener. So I'd really advise it for Irish dancers, especially for the upper body. It really helps your dancing.
Well, bring me back to the beginning. What part of London were you born in?
North London, Crouch End, which is sort of between Archway and Tottenham and Finsbury Park. So yeah, lots of I think I remember my mother saying that 3/4 of the parish were Irish. So that's who came to Irish dancing class. You know, they were the children of Irish immigrants, and this was in the 1960s.
Yeah. Well, Dr. John was talking about your mom and the inspiration she was. You know.
Oh.
So yeah.
Well, she still is. She still is an inspiration to me. You know, the amazing thing about technology is that we can do FaceTime on her iPad when she knows how to remember how to work it, and I show her and my dad videos of what's going on at the moment. Now, I can tell you, she loves David Gainey, she loves the Gardner Brothers. I sometimes warn her that there's going to be a little bit of hip hop or rap music she mightn't like. She loves it. She loves it. And for the last few years, whenever I've gone over to visit, I'll show her on YouTube Parade of Champions, and she'll sit there as if she's at the fesh and critique every one of them. And she's still sharp when it comes to dancing. Yeah, she still knows her stuff.
But you know, when you have it, once you have it forever. Do you know? You never lose that. That's your mom and dad.
That's it. That's it. That's when they were over visiting me here about 9 or 10 years ago. Yeah. They used to come over every year, and up until COVID, I was going over a couple of times a year to stay with them. So I don't know when I'll next be over, but it's great that we have FaceTime that we can do that at the moment.
Oh God, I don't know how people would do it. I mean, when my mum moved back to Ireland with me, and Daddy was still in London until I was 14 because he couldn't get work. So I only saw him once a year, but on a few occasions I didn't even see him because of foot and mouth disease, and they weren't allowed in from the UK into Ireland. So I didn't see him at all for 2 years. And there was just a phone at the end of the road that you'd stand and wait for the phone call from London at the telephone box right outside our door in Chaplin Road in Wembley.
That's hard, isn't it?
That must have been incredibly hard for people who had no...
Mary, did you go to a dancing class when you lived in Wembley then?
No, I was, I didn't start until I actually came home here to Ireland. It was ballet I was going to be going to in London. And but if my mum had been in an area, I suppose, where there had been loads of Irish, she would have settled in more. But where we were, I was the only child in the neighbourhood, and they were all retired people, and all my father's side were Welsh and Methodist, and she was the only Irish Catholic in the family. And they weren't into dancing. They were into singing, okay, but not going to dances and things like that. So she felt she missed being home in Ireland, and she was stubborn, so she insisted on I come back here. But sometimes I regret it, because I would have had so much more in the line of the arts in the UK.
Right. Yeah.
Than we had here. I mean, we were in the 70s, 60s, about 69, before Joan Denise Moriarty came to Ireland to set up the Cork Ballet Company. And she approached my mother in school, and the teacher, and she came to our school and she wanted me, but Mum wouldn't let me go to Cork because I'd had to go as a boarder. So I missed out on that as well,
Yeah, the Cork City Ballet, were they the ones who did the tour of Playboy of the Western World? Because I saw that.
Yeah, she set up the only ballet company at the time in Ireland, Joan Denise Moriarty.
Well, it was really magnificent, because my mother took me to see Playboy of the Western World, took me to see them. And I remember watching it, and we both really loved it. But I said, but why are they doing ballet dancing when they're Irish? And she said, this is a ballet dance, this is a ballet company. And I said, well, why do they have to do why can't they do Irish dancing? And she said, well, because ballet is used to tell a story. And that planted a seed, because I thought, surely we can tell stories using Irish dancing. Surely we could do that.
Yeah.
So,
I long thought of that.
That planted the seed, and that's why, you know, I mean, I do that as my main job. That's what I do. How
did you get involved in drama in the first place? Because I'm an associate of the Victoria College of Music and Drama in London, and I look at you and I think there's so much. I see, you know, I can associate myself with in you. You know, you're into drama, you're into the storytelling, you're into the dance, you know, and.
Well, I think when I was about 8 years old, a drama company came to our school, and the way I felt when they were performing was I'd never felt anything like that before, and thought, that's what I'm going to do. And I promptly told my mother that when I grow up, I'm going to be an author and an actress. And she said to me, well, most actors are out of work and you can write in your spare time, but you need to get a proper job with a proper wage. And that's what most parents say. But later on, I went and did a course in, I took a degree in the performing arts, and I used my Irish dancing to get in. That's my audition. And I thought, once I'm in, I'll switch over to drama. Well, I didn't. I stayed with the dance lot, and it was the best thing, because I was able to take all of these theatre and drama modules, and I was able to create my own degree course where I really mixed dance with drama and found different ways of, I mean, you know, I learned choreography, I learned different styles of dance, but I also learned stagecraft, I learned about solo performance, I learned about directing, and, you know, just about theatre. And then when I was getting near the end of my course, and by this time I'd started to stage some of my Irish dance drama shows at college, and people kept saying to me, oh, you're good at this, you should do this for a living. And then somebody said to me, you should form your own company. So my sister was also doing the same course a year behind me. And I said, and she's much more drama based than I am. I mean, she makes her living out of being a teacher, an actor, a director, and a writer. And I said, Angela, she's
in the UK.
She's in London, in the UK. And I said, I'm going to set up a group. So so Angela and I set up an Irish dance theatre group. And there were 3 Irish dancers to begin with, myself, Angela, and Mary Cosgrave, who had danced for Maguire Way. She was an All-Ireland champion. She's dancing with me in the West London Cultus photograph I may have sent you.
Yeah, you did.
So then there were a couple of other dancers, modern and ballet dancers, Angela Chambers and Kate Brown, and Kate Nelligan, and we put together an Irish dance theatre company, and we were due to be called the Auntie Marys. That was the plan. And then we all went out for a drink to celebrate our new company, and we lifted our pints, and as we were about to drink, my sister said by accident, well, here's to the Hairy Marys, and we all burst out laughing. And
called it the Hairy Marys.
Yeah, so the drinks went everywhere, and Angela looked at me and she said, yeah. And I said, well, it'll get us noticed. And it got us noticed. Yeah. I mean, you know, my mother begged us not to call it that. But my grandmother from Armagh said, oh, Hairy Mary, there's nothing.
Come here, I was told to ask you, your dad is from Monaghan.
That's right, North Monaghan.
Is your dad related to I can't remember what he said.
Monica Clerkin?
No, it's is it Mike Clerkin, or Mike Clerkin, I think he said he is, because he's my producer said to me, that's a Monaghan name. And I said, I looked and I said, Monaghan. He said, ask her, is she related to, and I can't remember. Someone Clerkin from Monaghan.
Yeah, there's Aidan Clerkin is my cousin's son. He's a country singer. There's Monica Clerkin, who was the adjudicator. We're not related, but my dad thinks maybe related to her husband, you know, some way far off. But I think that's about it. Yeah, but there's lots of Americans around, lots of us in North Monaghan.
He said to me he's a Corkman, so I'm shocked he'd actually know that. But he said, that's a Monaghan name. And I said, well, I don't, I said, but I said, there's bound to be more than one Clerkin in Monaghan. You know, it's, you know, he's probably not related.
There's a lot of it.
But,
yeah, there's a lot of it. Yeah,
but,
Monaghan and Cavan, there's a lot of Clerkins.
But you said you went to Ted Kavanagh for a while.
I did. So I started off with my mum, obviously, when I was, I don't know, probably 4. At 8 years old.
How does a daughter leave their own mother and go to another school? Did you not feel like a traitor, Maura?
She sent me away because she said that she could see I had potential, but she wasn't going to be spending time on me at the class. And there certainly wasn't time at home. So she wanted me to be taught properly, and she didn't want to put her time, when she should have been teaching the paying customers, to teaching me. So she sent me off to TED. And it was fantastic.
Because you're a better teacher.
Well, I'd known Ted since I was a baby. So everybody was terrified of him and called him Mr. Kavanagh.
Yeah, I love teachers like him.
Yeah, and I was this little 8-year-old, and they'd be saying, oh, Mr. Kavanagh, may I do this? And Mr. Kavanagh, I'm sorry I'm late. And I'd just go up and say, hello, Ted, can I learn the new hornpipe step? You know, it's like I was completely relaxed, and I was teacher's pet, as I now realise, because he was very strict, and he used to have this big plank of wood. I mean, he'd be convicted now, but he said, and he used to lift it up above his head and slam it down next to a child's foot.
Look at that photograph of Máire Clerkin. I mean, if there was ever a face that you'd know instantly was Máire Clerkin, she's the only child in the photograph smiling, a big grin, looking at the camera. Máire, you certainly weren't camera shy.
No, I had just been promoted to the big team, you see. My big brother is in that one. He's the little boy. That's my big brother, Paul. And I was the youngest in the team, and I'd just been promoted. I'd just got in. So I was...
your mum's class costume?
It was her early class costume. Then she had the red, if you remember, the red dress with the black velvet jacket.
I like that colour.
The yellow?
Yeah, I like that colour. I think it's most unusual. You don't see too many yellow class costumes now.
Lillian Massey had that costume, that class, that colour for a while.
Lovely. It's lovely. Do you miss the shawls? Like I kind of miss the nod, the nod to the traditional. Tara brooch or a bit of embroidery or something that references the Book of Kells, where the original story of Irish dancing costumes kind of progressed to. I mean, we did that with John Culnan, the progression of the costumes. And Mother of God, Maura, if you saw some of the costumes that were Irish dancing costumes, they were so heavy and cumbersome, and how they danced in them, and they did. And then gradually the embroidery started to come in, and the Book of Kells started to become a heavy influence. Suddenly that's all gone. And I love the traditional, the contemporary ones now, but I'd love to see some embroidery in them, like from the Book of Kells, or a tara brooch, or the shawl.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it's a funny thing about the costumes, but my mother told me that the Irish dance costume was based on the harpist's costume from medieval times, but I guess, you know, some of them were awful, just because they're old and traditional. Some of them were horrible, and the velvet ones. The velvet ones were very heavy. You see
John Culnan's interview, and you'll see costumes, the like of which you never even imagined could be worn on a human being. They were just, I mean, they were just amazing in their own way, but so, like, you couldn't imagine ever dancing in them.
Well, some of the old ones are lovely, and some of them not so lovely. And I would say about the modern ones nowadays, I look at them and I think, you know, they're beautiful in their way. They're works of art. They're incredible. But I wouldn't have been an Irish dancer had I been born at a different time, because we couldn't have afforded it. And I just hate to think of all of the many people who can't join in with Irish dancing because of the cost. And that can't be right. No. And you know, that's not to say that I don't love some of the modern dresses,
But
you know,
what
and
do
I
you think of the people who would say that, well, you know, the most expensive costume is the very first one. After that, you can get your money back by selling it second hand, and you could be spending time trying to rehab your child, or get them out of jail, or whatever, or get them out of trouble in some way that at least they're involved in. And anything you're involved in, whether it's tennis or golf or anything at the highest level, you've got to invest money. What do you think of that?
well, I think I can see the point of that, but when I look at, I'll use the example of soccer.
Yeah.
Soccer, you can be really poor and you can end up a world-class soccer player because you didn't need anything expensive. You just needed a football to kick against the wall or around the field. And so therefore you can rise to a very high level without, as a poor person, or even as a medium wage earner. Now, even families who are not poor, but are just kind of average, if they have more than one child and one of the children wants a really expensive dress and to travel to the World Championships and to get on a plane every week to go to a fesh, you know, that's beyond a lot of wage earners. And it's not only the costumes, it's everything that now surrounds it. It's the wigs and the makeup and all of that. And what I would say about the wigs is, if we have to explain to people who are not involved in Irish dancing, why do they have to wear all this stuff? Why do 8-year-olds look like something from a beauty pageant? Supposing you're 15 and you don't want to look like a pink fairy princess, you just want to look cool. I would say that if Jean Butler had come out at the Eurovision Song Contest wearing a Marge Simpson wig, then maybe Riverdance wouldn't have been such a huge, amazing phenomenon, because there would have been just this weird cult of Irish dancing where people wear bizarre.
But what about the misfortune? Now, Maura, you have a fine head of hair there, so you know, I mean, it's you look at me. I spend most of my time doing this to try and create body in it. The poor misfortunes like me having to go to bed before a competition with rollers in your hair, sprayed to within an inch of your life before you even went to bed to make sure it didn't fall out. 2 minutes after you started dancing your first round, dead straight again. That was fine with the costumes we were wearing, but the costumes now, there are many who will say, you know, they don't suit. We tried to bring them the straight hair, no wigs and no makeup into Munster for certain ages. And the costumes were so ornate and the hair was so straight in some children. Some children had really short hair. And there are many who would feel that it creates a level playing field when you can just put your hair up in a ponytail, fix it in a bun wig, and 5 minutes after you finish dancing, off comes the wig and you're back to your normal self again, no pain.
Right. Well, the first thing I'd say about that is that, and I know the costumes were simpler then, but Anne Gallagher won, 4 World Championships with their hair tied up in a bun. And, you know, I remember kids with short hair doing really well. And I know the costumes were less ornate. But when you say it's a great leveler, I understand, you know, if your hair doesn't curl and all of that, and mine didn't, and I had to spend many a sleepless night with those.
Or your hair spiked in punk.
Spiky colours. But why do you have to have curly hair? And why, you know, I think what's going to happen over the next few years, here's my prediction.
Yeah.
There's going to be a little bit of a reckoning with young people who will look and say, I don't want to look like that. That's bizarre. That's strange. I want to look cool. And
yeah, but
dresses and crazy wigs will be laughed at in the way that we laugh at the feathers now. So
if somebody comes along, we were talking John Connan, there was a photograph, you'll see it, and the photograph, it's a really old one, and I thought straight away of thought straight away of Deborah Mulvenna, because I said, that is where Deborah got her idea. And, you know, and I know Deborah is an artist and very creative. And there was Deborah Mulvena's girls' berries.
Yeah, in the hat.
The hats on this, and it was a really old, it's about 120 years old, the photograph. And she had the hat to the side, the kind of pillbox hat to the side with feather coming out of it. And I thought, oh my God, I said to myself, that's where Deborah Mulvena researched her feather with the hat. But, you know, when you were talking about, I'm not saying I agree with everything with the wigs and everything like that, but, you know, I mean, I just think of the misfortunes that have suddenly spiked their hair or put razored the back of their hair off, and suddenly they're going up in competition in an Irish dancing costume, and they want to cover up the fact that half of their hair is gone, shaved at this side, and the other half is normal, you know, fashionable, and suddenly they can have hair for a competition, go back then to their funky looks or whatever, you know, the way everyone has a different style now, youngsters. But I was looking at a video.
Josephine, did you wash?
But I was looking at a video there a while back, YouTube, and I'm obsessed with watching ice skating and that. And Oksana Bayul was my favorite female ice skater of all times. She was Russian. Her parents died when she was a child, and her coach brought her up. They had nothing. The girl had the poorest of shoes. The costumes were made for her by his wife, and she was just simply spectacular. And it was this woman that said, "Oh, I hated watching her. She embarrassed me." This comment, "She embarrassed me with her poor costumes. I hated looking at those awful costumes she had on her." Well, I found myself going to town on her. I said, "You should be utterly ashamed that you would judge somebody by the costume they wore. It didn't matter what she wore. She was superior to anybody in the competition." And I said, "Have some compassion. She was an orphan who was really..."
And I think that's very true. As an adjudicator, whether they're wearing an amazing costume or not a good costume, our job is to see beyond that. And you know, I don't want to completely disrespect beautiful costumes. You know, I love the idea of costume design as an art form. I'm not trying to undermine that.
No.
I'm just uncomfortable with all the price and
and I'm uncomfortable with how expensive it's gone for some children, which is why I said to you earlier, there are a lot of children who are very good, like Father Michael, who won 5 All-Irelands, and may not have been able to dance because he couldn't afford the costume, or he couldn't afford to go to the feis. And that's sad. Do you know? That's sad.
I think I was, I think I won the qualifying under 15 in London, and I didn't even, not only did I not go to the World, I didn't even ask my mum if I could go, because I knew that there wasn't enough money.
Yeah.
And just wasn't discussed.
Yeah. Well, I was an only child, and my mother was an only child, but Dad was living in England, as I said, so there was only one wage, half a wage coming into our house, because in those days Mum had to give up her job once she got married. And so Dad was splitting his wages between his mother in England and my mother. And there was very little, but she still, because I was an only child, she could do it. But there were other children who, who were good as well, but wouldn't have been able to afford to go to dancing. And it still wasn't as prohibitive as or expensive as it is today, because there's a lot of travel involved today. That wasn't there before. You were lucky if you went to Dublin before.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we didn't travel. We'd have about 3 or 4 festivals a year, and no, I mean a few people used to go up to Birmingham. Occasionally somebody would go over to the All Ireland, but travel wasn't really the thing. No, but as you say, Mary, about the ice skater, yeah. How terrible that somebody would judge her because she wasn't dressed right.
She came out, Maura, and she did Swan Lake in a white tutu, and she was the closest I could ever come to a ballet dancer on ice. She just was absolutely breathtaking. It's on YouTube. Oksana Bayul is her name. Bail.
Wow.
Just breathtaking. And for somebody to say, I couldn't stand looking at her. I hated her god-awful costumes. They were poor. I thought I'm actually not. I saw red, and of course I don't think I engage the fingers before I think, and I just. It's amazing how many people commented how right I was. But
but then I think you're probably informed by the whole Irish dance culture, which is that we're given all of this training and that we know what is good technique, and so we'll really, that's our job.
Talent, not
a good dress or a bad dress. Is to see.
I saw nothing wrong with her dress. I thought she was just. Oh, you have to watch her and you'll know what I'm talking about, Maura. And if you're into feet and you're into carriage and you're into natural God-given talent, then you'll see what I'm talking about. She was just breathtaking, and to me she was the greatest and will always be the greatest, because she danced. She was in every way she was the perfect skater for me. But yeah, it just so red when I heard about this comment. Just couldn't stand looking at her poor clothes.
Oh.
And I thought, if we said that in Irish dancing, we'd be so wrong.
Absolutely.
Judge a child just because of what they're wearing on stage.
Yes. Yeah.
But you went to Ted Kavanagh's anyway, and how was it with him?
Well,
you liked him.
I really loved it, but I was very shy. So I was there for 2 years. Didn't make any friends, didn't win a single medal in that time.
But shy child.
That's right. But that's why I learned to dance. I know, but that's where I learned to dance. I think that's where I took notice. I took notice, and I loved it. And my mother went to Mr. Smith's. She was trained by Mr. Smith, but then Ted Kavanagh arrived in town from Derry, and she and a whole load of others jumped ship and went to Ted because Mr. Smith had taught it in a very lovely folky traditional way musically, but Ted was fierce with the technique. And she said it was a very steep learning curve, and it's something that we probably all take for granted now, because down the years it's become much more technical, but he was a little bit of he shook things up.
What do you think of this style, the way that dancing has gone now, aside from the costumes and the wigs?
Well, it's become much more athletic, obviously, and very exciting, covering a big stage. And I think with Zoom now, with COVID, then there's a lot more emphasis on placement, which is great, because, I love good footwork. However, and I say this as somebody who did not have good carriage, when the upper body is really stiff, it's very off-putting.
Yeah.
And I feel that the overcross is causing a lot of that.
Yes, it is. It is. And it's causing a lot of the knees going out.
Yes, and the hips are now out of alignment. And so the upper body is crossing over and then it has to twist back. And so therefore it's unnatural. And therefore the child has, or the dancer has to hold themselves very stiffly to try and keep that placement. And I understand why teachers want that. They want that lovely, you know, beautiful, symmetrical footwork, the cross. But if you look at the really good dancers, they do not overcross.
Yeah.
They cross, don't overcross. By overcrossing, some dancers are sitting. Many of them have very stiff bodies that...
And as you say, the shoulders go as well.
Yeah, they're overcompensating, and it's unnatural. It's lovely when you see, like when you interviewed Jimmy Smith, and we've been looking at recordings of some of the older dancers, and it's such a breath of fresh air to see. And you know, we see it with the Gardner brothers and so on. You know, the really good dancers, the Colin Dunns of this world.
Yeah.
They dance.
Oh God, yeah.
It looks easy, and it's
It's
easy,
natural looseness,
and it flows. It doesn't look like having, as my mother used to say, you look like you're having a fight.
You know, I was thinking, did you see Jimmy's interview when he said?
I only saw half of it. I've got to finish it.
When he said he was on stage in Dublin at the All Ireland, and he was on with the guy who was expected to win. And he was dancing, and he said in Kerry everything is down to the ground and traditional and rhythmic and everything like that. And he pointed his toe, and next he said he saw the guy beside him just take off, and he thought he was getting a seizure, and he stopped to look. I was right, and it was Danny Armstrong, and Danny and Danny just shot off like a greyhound out of a starting block. He just and Jimmy didn't know, he'd never seen dancing like that before, and he thought he was having a seizure. He stopped. And Anna got so annoyed with him. Anna was his teacher, that she threw him in the fountain at the Mansion House afterwards for stopping up. You have to listen to it. You told it to me before, but it was just funnier when it comes from Jimmy. I thought
brilliant.
He said, Mary, and I stopped to see, was he all right? He continued dancing.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant.
You know, it's just amazing, the different styles. You know, he was all the way up from Kerry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that Munster style, it's very into the ground. I think that the styles have become a lot more homogenized now as we're more globalized. That,
and we see YouTube and we watch Parade of Champions, and
yeah, you used to be able to tell who, you know, where people were from their dancing.
We were talking about that, Jimmy and myself, and I said, you know, when David was dancing, David Gainey, even in competition, and I judged him many times, you could still see the Munster, you could still read. I could read the origin of his style. I could see, if I never knew he was Jimmy Smith's dancer, you could see the style, you could see the tradition coming through, the traditional within all that rhythm and all that contemporary. Even still today in the contemporary stuff, he's brought his dancing back to Shanos, and he dances on a little board in the pub. And, you know, his heart is still in the tradition rather than the contemporary dance. And yes. I think it's lovely. I
think what David Gainey does and what some other artistic Irish dancers do is that they combine the old with the new. And I feel that that's what really sparks my interest, is that people, you know, you shouldn't have to choose. And I remember there being this discussion with my mother, who's a musician, and her father was getting all annoyed and upset at this new group called Stockton's Wing, that they were messing up Irish music. And she said, you don't have to choose. You can have old and new. You know, there's room for all of us. And I thought that was a great thing. And it sort of instructed me that, you know, I really, really love traditional Irish music and would go to sessions whenever I could and whenever I can. But I also like when people do something adventurous, experimental, and that's what's happened with Irish dancing, is that it's alive because it's a living, breathing thing, and we mustn't just get stuck in with
being allowed to move the arms, and that almost brings that. It's like, I suppose, when you listen to these these programs, Extreme Makeover or Grand Designs in particular, and he talks about reading the history of the building and not trying to make it look like an old building. Have the new attached to the old, but be able to read the history of that monument from old to new. Leave it all there for people in generations to come to be able to say, oh, you can see the style of the building through the architecture. You have a glass dome attached to a Georgian building attached to a medieval, but don't change the history of it. And I think that's what the modern dancers are doing now. They're Shanos, and they're the original, then they're Shanos, and then they're 60s, and you can see all the styles kind of coming through. Do you know?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's also a respect, not only a respect for the tradition, but it's a respect for the music and the technicality of beautiful rhythm and timing. And sometimes at a feis, I think dancers and parents might lose sight of it. They think it's about the costume or the high jumps or getting across the stage. It's rhythm and timing. That's key. And so I think that if there's anything good to come out of COVID-19, it's been these Zoom presentations of dancers where you're seeing them just the legs and feet, and the beautiful material and the tricks done in a very enjoyable way that is I wouldn't say it's a new development. It's a development that I think just draws us all in. That it's such a celebration of the old and the new together. And my big I admire most people who want to take Irish dancing and do something, put their own stamp on it. Whether it's David Gainey, the Gardner brothers, Ciara Sexton, Colin Dunn, Jean Butler, Brendan DeGally, people who, fusion fighters, Taptronic, all of these, they want to take what they've got, not trash it, but do something else with it. Maybe we need to think more about Irish dancing, not as a competitive form, but think of it in other ways. That I think that a lot of people are becoming more creative with ideas because of the situation at the moment, and that we've got the technology to that there could be an online feis, but also that we're watching more performance of Irish dance, and that I think that performance and theatre and the arts, surely I'm not really terribly interested in the rules and regulations and clause A of section B in competitions. Do
you think there's too many rules?
Yeah.
Do you?
I'm sorry?
Do you think there are too many rules?
No, that's not really what I'm saying. No, I feel that people who have an Irish dance school, I think if you have an Irish dance school and you want to enter your dancers into competitions, there have to be all of these many rules and regulations. I understand that. I'm not arguing against rules and regulations at all. It's just what I'm saying is that my emphasis and my interest is not with that. Even though I love to adjudicate, my interest is more with exploring and appreciating the theatrical, presentational, as well as social side of Irish dancing.
What do you think of the idea? I posed it to, forget who I posed it to now, Carol Scanlon, about the idea of bringing in a compulsory round at, say, the All Ireland or the World that focuses on the traditional set, where they have to choose a traditional set to dance, because you know, you can see once children, Jimmy Smith said it to me, once children can master the traditional, they'll master any dance, because the traditionals are very often harder to master than the more modern dances, he feels. What do you think of that?
I think there's a lot of truth in that about the traditionals. There, you know, your basics will really give you the key. It's like learning a language. You know, you learn the grammatic rules and some of the base vocabulary and the accent and delivery, and you've got the basis. And so I think that traditional set dances are the foundation of Irish dancing. That's where you develop and show your technique. As for putting up a competition, the idea of judging 100 or 200 dancers doing a traditional set dance, that would be a little bit of a challenge. I mean, you know, it's a bit of a challenge to judge when, and I know we were talking about costumes, about when they're all in black. And I love that, because it, you know, that's a great leveler. But you know, if there's more than 60 or 70 of them, it's a little bit hard to kind of keep track of who everybody is. Because I don't know about you, but I make little notes to remind myself.
I put down red or flower in the side of the hair, and little things to remind me, or glitter waistcoat, or just a thing that will actually stand that child out. Yeah, that's it. So when they're all wearing black, that would be hard in a major, just as if they were all doing a traditional set. I mean, it's like when you're judging Cayley and, you know, you're on your 50th high court cap. You know, that's why you just have to be so. Tyrrell, Lord rest him. When you said high, I don't know why Lord rest Tony's face came into my head. He used to always crave. What he loved was to see a set dance done like you're interpreting the music. And you'd see Bonaparte's retreat, and you'd see the retreating, and and David Gainey, I was talking to him when I interviewed him, and he said, you know, he said, my favorite set dance ever, he said, was Bonaparte's retreat. And I made it up, he said, and I spent so much time making it up, and I researched the whole lot of it, the story behind it and everything. And he said, I made the set up and I never videoed it, he said, and it's my biggest regret. I don't have it on record. And I was thinking, and he said, what you're saying is 100% right, Mary. It's important to interpret the horse, the retreating, the galloping forward, and the whole story. You have to be able to tell the downfall of Paris. You know, you have to be able to, King of the Fair, you have to be able to tell the story and to be able to read that story. And you don't often see that, you know, now, because there's lots of toe work and lots of clicks and lots of rhythm and lots of movements, but it's not, you know, Tony was mad to see sets, he said, that actually told the story in front of him.
Absolutely, I agree. There was a dancer called Gerard Mcwilliams in London, and he was a fine dancer. He was, you know, probably won majors and stuff. I don't know if he ever won the world. He would have been in the top 3 for sure. Went to Jackie Kelly's school. He did a Kilkenny races that was, it would stop everything. Everybody would come to look because it was so incredible. It was just so pictorial and so beautifully interpretive of the music. And he did it with great style and panache. And so when you see those, you remember them. Unfortunately, this before people had video cameras, so I don't even know if there's a recording of that. But I remember at the time Terry Bowler in London saying, Terry Bowler even saying we should keep these set dances for posterity. Yeah, you know, that these should go into our, I don't know, into our library. That you know, just like the Cormac O'Keeffe King of the Fairies. Yeah. But I mean, I remember Eugene O'Brien's King of the Fairies. He would have been a year older than me. I would have been born in McLaughlin's age group and that. And Celine Wiley. But Eugene was older, and I can still remember his Kilkenny races and it's like the horse
kicking his leg out, and he'd retreat and he'd move forward. And I can still remember that, and I think to myself, you know, it was just, when you think back on it, it was just so interpretive of the music and interpretive of the story and the name. But
Yes.
you know, how did you get in? Tell me about the bad arm, Maura.
Well, it was about 12 years ago now. I was trying to write, because I'd done mainly theatre. I thought, well, I live near Hollywood, I should write a film. So I tried to write a screenplay about Irish dancing, and I didn't have a clue, and I was getting stuck. And I just couldn't get my head around plot and characters. So I thought, well, to loosen up, to get myself writing, I'm just going to write lots of stories from memory about growing up Irish dancing. So I started to write all of these, and I thought, well, this is much better. This flows, and this has got humor, and this has got life to it. So I had this collection of stories. And I talked to somebody who was running the Celtic Arts Centre in North Hollywood at the time. And he said, would you do it for a small invited audience? And I thought, well, I haven't really performed or done any storytelling for a long time. And now I've been over here for 5 years. I should do that. So I did it. And I had friends who are actors who said, turn this into a show. And so I thought about it, and I applied for, there was a grant that I applied for funding. And in the meantime, my sister, who had worked in lots of different theatre companies, including the world-renowned Improbable Theatre, said, I know somebody who I worked with Improbable in New York, and his name is Dan O'Connor, and he is a great director and improviser. Why don't you ask him to direct your play? So I went and saw a couple of his performances, and I sent him my script, and I said, if I get funding, would you maybe, and he called me back and he said, I tell you what, if you get funding, I'll direct it. And if you don't get funding, I'm going to direct it. Because he liked the script so much. And even though he's got an Irish name, he's Irish American, he knew nothing whatsoever about Irish dancing, but everything about performance and comedy and improvisation and staging, and he lifted it from the page onto the stage, and got me to do all kinds of things to turn those collection of stories into a one-woman show, which I thought was just going to be something that I would do half a dozen times. And I just kept applying to different festivals, and then I kept getting booked for these different things. And before I knew it, I was touring all over the US, and then performed it in Canada. Then I took it to the Edinburgh Festival with the help of some very generous donors on my Kickstarter campaign. I thought I was going to finish up with it in London 3 years ago. I thought that'll be it, the end. In London, little theatre in the West End, Covent Garden, the pinnacle. And it was. But then 2 years ago, Judy McCafferty asked me, I met her at the Cleveland Fesh, and she asked me, would I consider doing my show at the World Championships? And I said, I'm past 60 now. I think I've retired it. And she said, I think you should think, because she had come to see it when she was at a Fesh here. She had come to see it when I was doing it at a small theatre in Hollywood. She said, I think you should consider it. So she then spoke to Mary McGinty. Yeah. And Mary McGinty then talked to, the Southern region. And before I knew it, I was doing it at the World Championships. So that's where I retired it. It was last year.
You never brought it to Ireland.
I did bring it to Ireland. I did. Ronan McCormick did came earlier the Next Step Alternative Irish Dance Theatre Festival to coincide with the World Championships in 2011 in Tallaght. So and he staged 3 shows: Up and Over It, Brendan DeGally's Knock 2, and my show at the Civic Theatre.
Up and Over It was Colin Dunn's.
There was Suzanne Cleary and Peter Harding.
Which one did Colin Dunn do? I'm trying to think. Anyway.
Colin Dunn's done many. He did about time. I went to see Session and Concert. He's done some wonderful work with.
I went to see him with Maureen O'Rourke in in the theatre not so far away from me. It's actually a church. It's an old Protestant church, St. John's, and it's in my parish, but my parish church would be St. John's Cathedral, and this is a little church opposite it, and they have it. You'd love to perform in it, Maura. They do lovely shows inside there. It's really lovely inside it. It was.
And was that the show where there was footage of Anya dancing?
No, I'm not sure. It was down in a little square in St. John's Square. It's a beautiful little theatre, little place. The dance company had a place there for years.
Was it the Bell Table?
No, it's the Bell Table would be where, actually, I don't know if you ever came to Féile Limini in the Bell Table. It's the Bell Table now, but it was the Arklan na Féile Hall at the time when Féile Limini was on. But no, it would be the other side of town, but it would be the older side, right down near where the old walls of Limerick were, where the defence of the city of Limerick was. And happened, and yeah, it's where I live. But it's a beautiful place. You should think of trying to have an event there. It's small and it's personal. You know, you could have about 100 people would fit inside it.
Very nice. Well, let's hope that we can get back to live theatre sometime in our lifetime.
Yeah, do you think it's going to happen? Do you think we'll get back to competitions? Because I had to cancel mine, as many did this year. It was the safest thing to do.
I think it's very, very difficult. And I know that some people are running Feshna at the moment. And I admire them for trying so hard to keep it all going and to support dancers and teachers. And equally, I would say I don't want to go because I feel it's unsafe. And everybody must make up their own mind about it. Yeah. I fear for the upcoming Oireachtasí. I fear for those. I don't know whether they can go ahead. I hope they do, but I trust that we will not be risking lives for the sake of Irish dancing. It's just like the whole argument about schools, because my main job here in LA is I work with the arts curriculum. I teach Irish dance and drama with dance and literacy as part of the curriculum here. And for the foreseeable future, certainly for this term, maybe for the whole school year, I will not be doing that because the schools are not opening and many pupils are learning online. Unfortunately, not everybody will have that facility to do that. But it seems absolutely terrible that children are losing out on their education. And it is terrible, but there's something even more terrible than losing out on your education, and that's losing out on your life. So I don't want to be a scaremonger. There's plenty of that. I try to screen out the politicians and the news media, and I listen to the health workers among my friends and family for guidance. But it's a very, very challenging time, and I sincerely hope we can find a vaccine soon.
A safe vaccine.
Sorry?
A safe vaccine. My biggest worry is that you'll have a vaccine coming out and people panicking and rushing to get vaccines that haven't been 100% tested. And as somebody whose mother was pushed from within an inch of her life when she was pregnant on me to take thalidomide. Thalidomide.
So was my mother, and she didn't take it. So was my mother.
My mother refused point blank. She said, "Do not ask me again to take it. I'm not putting anything into my system while I'm carrying my baby." And thank God for that. On the other hand, she did get me injected for polio when I was in England, and polio, my cousin and a friend of mine both got it here in Ireland because it wasn't out. The vaccine wasn't out in Ireland but it was in England. And thank God on both occasions she was a wise woman. Do you know?
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah, it's very scary, very challenging times for everybody. On the one hand, I would say that we have to find ways of being positive and keep going and look after each other and watch out for people, particularly those who are isolated.
Yeah.
But when I say be positive, I don't mean be so positive that you're reckless. You know, there's a little bit of denial going on, and I understand why there's denial, because sometimes there's denial because the truth is too hard to bear.
Well, there's denial because the truth is too hard to bear. As well as that, what is actually people are getting so much mixed messages. They don't know. Like one doctor is saying this, and another doctor is saying that, and one immunologist says this, and another contradicts. And as well as that, there's also the fear that God Almighty, is this going to be what it's going to be like for the rest of our lives? If they don't.
I know there is that fear, and you know, I look to some of the countries who have done it right. You know, I know they have very different circumstances, like New Zealand and Australia and South Korea and Japan. They're islands,
countries, you know, with respect, and you could go vast periods of time without seeing another human being. In Australia, as we were saying the other day, you could travel for days without seeing another house in certain parts of Australia. So it's a huge continent, very underpopulated. London is massively populated. Dublin is massively populated in Ireland.
LA is. Yeah.
You know,
and look at all the number of cases they had in New York. And, you know, LA is now taking the brunt. So it's all very worrying. And I think that there's not a section of society that is untouched by it. You know, in the beginning I felt sorriest for the old people.
Oh yeah.
And now I think of you know, my nieces and nephews who are leaving school and want to go traveling, want to have a gap year, want to go and explore the world. And you know, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, it's just absolutely awful. And I'm hoping that these little interviews with the Irish dancing community anyway will keep their minds focused well away from the depressive media, get their information from their doctors, and focus on, you know, if you can't meet your friends, at least you can learn more about them through the interviews.
You're providing a great service. What are you there? You're the gay Byrne of Irish dancing.
I've changed sex, have I? I would love if I was gay Byrne. Oh, for God's sake, I was told the other day, Mary, you're just like Michael Parkinson. And I thought, now I hear gay Byrne and I'm thinking, Jesus, I must start putting my hair up or something. I'm starting to look masculine.
Okay, well, I was about to say you're Ellen, but I think she's in the news for bad reasons, so you can't be Ellen. I don't know who are the female chat show hosts.
There aren't really a whole lot, are there? There's Oprah, and if you say, and you know, there's Oprah, but like no, I'll take Gay Byrne and I'll take Michael Parkinson anytime, or Graham Norton. I'll be delighted. Graham Norton, you can bring a drink on with you on my show.
Yes. Oh well, I wish I had more than water, but you know, it's only early afternoon here.
It's not here. It's 7:30, so you could have drank it.
Yeah.
It's 8:30 Irish time in the evening. Yeah. So you could have drank it.
I could have done, but then I wouldn't get any work done today. You think this is all I've got to do today?
Maura, on that point, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Absolute pleasure, Mary. Absolute pleasure. And
there was a slight pause. There was a slight pause between what I'd say and what you'd hear.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I noticed that a few times, but you know, it's still magical that we can have this much communication from 5,000 miles away.
It's spectacular, but you're a breath of fresh air, and you're absolutely awesome, as the Americans say. You're awesome.
Awesome.
Just
well, I don't know about that, but we'll have to get to the really risque stories over a pint when we can all, when we've had our vaccines and we can meet up.
Our safe vaccines. Okay. God bless, Máire. Slán
Thank you very much for everything. All the best and good luck with all your future interviewees. You're doing a great job.
Thanks, Máire.
A great service.
Bye-bye.
All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
One thing, Mary, I feel that none of this would have been possible for me if it weren't for all my various teachers. I was taught by 6 different people growing up. I was extremely lucky. Yeah.
Yes,
well,
and it is lucky. It lucky.
It really is. And, I know that some people like wonderful dancers like Father Michael Johnson. What a beautiful dancer. Now, he just had...
Ted Kavanagh.
Ted Kavanagh, it's like that's a pretty good one to have. But I feel that the broader an education you can get, in whether it's dance or anything else, the better. And so my 6 teachers were, obviously, my mother, Máire Clerkin, then Ted Kavanagh for a couple of years. That was great. Then when my mum retired, when I was about 12, her pupils, Michael Maguire, always absolutely hilarious and lovely.
Oh, lovely.
June, who you with her great ballet knowledge and training.
Was that when Michael was with June?
That's right, Maguire Way.
Maguire Way.
And then
later, my pal June.
Oh yeah, and just such great innovation. They made up really beautiful material, and they had All Ireland champions.
I interviewed June as well. I don't know if you heard her interview.
Fabulous. I did hear it. Oh, I listened to it avidly. Absolutely.
She had the 2-toned hair as well. She was.
Oh yeah. Well, she had that before me, so I have to give her credit for that. So
she's always ahead of the curve.
That's it. She is. And then another pupil taught that my mother taught, Margaret O'Loughlin. And so later on, I went to Margaret O'Loughlin and Richard Griffin O'Loughlin. And like every teacher has their own special thing. And I could go on forever. I won't keep you because I know we're just at the end here. But they all had their own individual creativity and way of putting things across, and different aspects appeal to me in different ways as a dancer. And it didn't stop there. I was very lucky to have collaborated with many people like Anne Burke, Susan Swanton, Brian Swanton, Michael Dillon, Michael Sharon, Sinead Rush, Mary Cosgrave, so many amazing Irish dancers that my education continued. And that's one thing I would really wish for all of us to be able to do that. And we are sort of confined.
And but leading on from that, we were talking about that, Gary and myself, and Gary was saying, Mary, if you hadn't been with two different schools, I mean, I was very happy with the school I was with, but people children don't leave schools in many cases. It's because a school is nearer, or because a parent wants to take you, or whatever, for multiple different reasons you go to different schools. But as Gary said to me, if you hadn't had the advantage of the 2 schools, and then I went to Celine to do my TCRG, because she asked me would I help her out in the classes. He said you wouldn't have been able to talk at length about Irish dancing in the broad sense that you can. You'd be quite insular in knowledge, probably. You gather so much knowledge from all the teachers. Every one of them have a different way of teaching, and you say, well, I loved the way they did that, and I loved the way she did that, and he did that, and they did that, and it informs your knowledge that little bit more. So it's not a disadvantage.
No, it's just like ordinary school. It's just like when we grow up, we go to school and we go through different teachers all the time.
But I also admire people who stay with the one teacher their whole life. I think that's remarkably loyal as well.
It is, but I like the idea of us having a broad perspective as possible. And that's why it's not only my 6 wonderful teachers, it's also the people I've had the privilege of working with since. And I feel that is we're being confined. The way Commission is set up.
That's what I was about to ask you next. What do you think of the association rule? Because that came up again with Gary, and it seems to be a crux with many people. I think that you have to have something in place to create this sense of honesty and fair play for parents and children alike. But is it ruining the association rule? Is it preventing us from learning from one another as teachers? Because when you look at Jimmy Smith's little things that he puts up on traditional sets, we've never learned that because of an association rule.
I know, and I know that every so often the Commission will let us have a traditional set dance workshop and we can all attend a seminar or whatever. But I'm talking broader than that.
Yeah.
Every other dance form in the world, professionals go and learn and go to each other's classes, and they keep up their practice, they keep up their technique, they constantly develop, and there's not this suspicion and fear of mixing and collaborating. And I feel that it's holding us back. And the proof is that you have young people who are not bound by this. That a lot of young people are making stuff up because they're meeting with others and they're watching each other. They're watching each other's contributions.
They're collaborating in their own way.
Yeah, or they're being influenced by what they're seeing on videos, and then they're going on and moving something forward from that. So I think that we're only shooting ourselves in the foot by not allowing free association, whether it's in competitions with open platform or just in general. We should be able to, as professionals, there should be trust in us that we can still judge fairly, but we can still meet up and
at the end of the day, it's down to your honesty, Maura. It's down to your honesty, whether you're in someone's class watching their dancers, and whether you can come out at the end of the day and judge those dancers honestly. I don't think, personally, I don't know if association or the association rule makes you any more honest. I think it just doesn't. That sense of honesty.
I think we've seen it doesn't work.
Unfortunately.
But
then there are some who will say that maybe the way would be that teachers would be teachers and adjudicators would be adjudicators. Would that work? That's
a suggestion, but then again, that's another confinement because then you're saying we don't trust you, and that's my point, that we're professionals. If we want to mix with each other and learn from each other and teach each other, I mean, can you imagine if doctors never went to another conference to update their knowledge or to broaden new findings or to share new research? Could you imagine if, oh no, we don't do that, we just stay with our own little group?
I think if nothing else, the Zoom, being able to teach your children on Zoom and see other children, other classes, and that you start to see that we're all just in it for the dance, or we should be just in it for the dancing. And I think whether there is, I've had a lot of thought about this since I was talking to Gary, and I can see both sides. I can see that Commission are trying to create this, you know, sense of parity and sense of fairness. But at the end of the day, whether there's an association rule or there isn't an association rule, what it comes down to is, if I went into Máire Clerkin's class in the morning, would I be honest enough to be able to go up and judge without without judging based on the fact that I'd be a friend of Máire Clerkin's or whatever, or no Máire Clerkin? It has to come down at the end of the day. People have to be judged on their honesty.
Yeah, but it's much bigger than that, Mary, isn't it? I mean, this is an art form. And because it's an art form, then that means art can just spread out and look everywhere for influence and for change. And if all we do is talk about our classes and our competitions, you know, the Commission is supposed to be custodians of Irish dancing, not Irish dance competitions only and rules and regulations. We need to safeguard it as a beautiful art form, and that means sharing it.
Do you see it as an art form, or do you see it as a sport? Because I don't see it as a sport. I see it's physical, and you have to be incredibly fit. But so did Nureyev, so did Baryshnikov, so did Natalia Makarova, and they were all ballet dancers. They were artists. They were performers. And it was an art form. It wasn't a sport. So just to say something is really, you're being very physical and you have to go to the gym regularly. It's still an art form that I believe it is anyway.
Yeah. I've always said it's an art form, but I think if we say it's not a sport, then again we limit ourselves. We don't actually have to choose one or the other. There's no, you know, box A or box B. We could just say, well, yes, it's become more like a sport and more like a competitive sport, but essentially it's an art form. We don't really have to decide that it's
no, but I don't even see ice skating and that as a sport. I see it as an artistic performance.
Yeah,
because it's not always it's not always the best that wins. Sometimes you're there and you're saying, oh Jesus, he was robbed. You know, it's very subjective. It's very much what gets you emotionally after all the technicalities are out of the way and everyone has been decided as being exceptional technically. Which child is the one that actually made you the hairs in the back of your head stand up?
Absolutely, I agree. And you know, I love watching tennis, whether it's watching tennis or ice skating or gymnastics. I mean, most Irish dancers, we love gymnastics. We watch gymnastics, but we probably wouldn't be watching tennis or gymnastics or ice skating were it not a sport. So let's not close things in and say it's one or the other. It's like, let's keep it open and say we enjoy it because it's a national or an international sport that's televised. But we also know that Irish dancing, especially right now, without a doubt it's an art form, because not only would we have had all those beautiful shows, but we wouldn't have had development and people choreographing new material. Of course it's an art form.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, and I get why people do see it as being a sport, because children have to be so fit and everything. But I think, you know, there's nothing wrong with calling it an art form. That's the most glorious title that you can have, is that you're part of the arts, the creative arts, that you're the performance arts, and that you're creating, you're telling a story through your feet, through your movement. Through your movement. Storytelling.
Absolutely. And that's the business I'm in. You know, I'm trying to develop some projects at the moment which are about using Irish dance in different formats, you know, not always on the stage in a fesh.
And I mean, I did the Victoria College of Music and Dance and Drama exams because I suppose my whole life was in the arts, you know, from Irish dancing to shows and everything like that. So I'd be very much like you. I'd come to it from the point of view of, and I'm very much into stories and listening to people's stories, as you can tell. So I think there's no greater way of telling a story to people who don't like to read, people who don't have the patience to sit down and listen to somebody's story. But if they see it in a dance form, what greater way can you carry on our traditions and our stories than through dance?
And for somebody who hates going to the gym and whose knees are wrecked so I can't go running, dancing is the way that keeps a lot of us relatively fit and active.
Maura, I saw you doing your traditional, or doing your sets, and that, Madame Bonaparte, wasn't it?
Yes.
And I thought, oh my God, she's got such stamina.
Well, if only I'd had that when I was competing, but we can't turn back the clock.
My feet are still the same, and it's the stamina that's I mean, when you have asthma and you can't get through 8 bars. But I'm trying to work at it, because I said one day I might actually do my garden of daisies and send it to Michael.
Well, you see, you have asthma as your alibi. I didn't. I would come off the stage at the Feis, and I couldn't even go down and sit in the audience. I'd be standing at the side of the stage, gasping for breath. It was all the smoking and drinking from the night before. You know, I'm afraid.
I never drank or smoked, so I don't know. But I mean, the thing is, I never had asthma when I was in competition. I never had asthma in Bunratty Castle, and I was 14 years there, 7 nights a week dancing, 2 shows a night. When we'd go on tour, 76 shows in 9 days. And I never had, I could keep going forever. And I look at the me that was then and think, oh God, if I was only an eighth of that again. Do you know?
Can get back to it, Mary. I think you should start up an online class, and we'll all associate with you. You'll be thrown off the commission now.
Well, I'd be in real trouble with the commission then for starting, and no, I wouldn't. But
sometimes you have to break barriers to change the world.
But Luann O'Rourke has a great running page. I joined it, and I can only bask in their success, and Luann talking about her times, and I'm sitting there on the couch with a sandwich in my hand on a laptop looking at Luann checking her times and her speeds and all the teachers.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. We're armchair athletes. I think that's a great
armchair athlete.
Yeah.
A great armchair athlete. But thanks ever so much for that.
Thank you, Mary. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honour. And well done for all that you're doing. You're opening up the conversation and drawing people into, areas where we're having to really think about where we are and what might change and where we're going.
There is no change without dialogue. I mean, my whole PhD was about that. The point, you're never going to understand the other person unless you actually sit down and listen to their perspective of a situation. It's going to continuously be a them and us situation, and you get half-baked stories and people bring back, and it becomes like Chinese whispers. He said this and she said that. Why not listen to the person themselves? What do they think? How has their journey been? How do they think Irish dancing should go? Don't have to agree, but you certainly must listen.
Yeah. And let's listen to some of the young people, because I feel that us oldies and people older than us have been in power or been around for a long time, and I feel that there's lots of young teachers getting a little bit disenchanted for their lack of say in what could be. Let's try and stand back and let them imagine what could be.
Well, Maura,
centre of the British Empire. No, London is where the Empire strikes back. It's always been a very, very diverse place. Well, for a start, you've got, from the Empire, you've got people from the Indian subcontinent, from Cyprus, from the Caribbean, and the Irish were there in force. I'm from County Kildare, the land of eggs and bacon. If you think I eat your fish and chips, but Jesus, you're mistaken.
way, your costume matches your wall.
Hang on. What? Oh, you mean the red dress? The pink. These are pink walls.
Yeah,
When I moved.
but on my camera, your dress looks pink.
Oh, really? Oh, brilliant. Well, you know, when I moved into this apartment, a friend of mine used to live here before I did, and I changed everything except the pink walls because I love them.
I love the pink walls. What color are they?
It's pink, but look, I've got. It's pink, but look, I've got a crazy chandelier.
Maura, I love your chandelier.
Yeah.
Where did you get that?
I got it in a little shop. I was down getting my back sorted from an osteopath, and I walked past, and this was about 12 years ago. I was stony broke. I had no money. I was struggling to pay bills, and I saw this in a shop window, and it was $150. And I thought, I have to have it. And I went in and I said, you wouldn't sell us that for a little less than 100? No. And I went back the next week. Would you maybe consider a reduction? No. So I just broke the bank and bought it.
That's kind of like me, Maura. No matter how broke you are, if you see something nice, feck the bills. They'll be there in 2 weeks' time. I'm buying that now. I don't know, was it a woman thing?
It's like, you know, it's also because we're artists. We love colour and we love design.
I'll talk to you on Facebook.
Wonderful. See you, Mary.
Love you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Great.
You're
Bye-bye.
amazing. Amazing.